I can still remember every single detail of that night, even though it happened over 30 years ago. The way the air smelled like rain before the storm hit. The sound of my parents' car crunching down the gravel driveway as they left for their anniversary dinner. The way the house seemed to hold its breath as soon as I was alone. I was 12 years old enough to stay by myself for a few hours, or so my parents thought. That afternoon, my mom had made me promise for the 100th time not to open the door for anyone, to keep all the windows locked, and to call Mrs. Henderson next door if I needed anything. I rolled my eyes and told her I'd be fine. After all, Coldwater, Michigan was the safest town in America. Nothing bad ever happened here. The first few hours passed normally. I microwaved myself a TV dinner, the kind with the little compartment of apple cobbler that always burned my tongue, and plopped down on the couch to watch TGIF. The laugh tracks from Full House and Family Matters filled the empty house, making it feel less lonely. Around 9:30, I heard the first rumble of thunder in the distance. That's when the power went out. Not just in our house. The entire neighborhood went dark. One second I was watching Urkel do something stupid. The next I was sitting in complete blackness. The sudden silence was deafening. No hum of the refrigerator. No ticking from the grandfather clock in the hallway, just the sound of my own breathing and the rain starting to patter against the windows. I fumbled for the flashlight we kept in the coffee table drawer. The beam flickered weakly when I clicked it on. The batteries were probably old. I remember thinking I should have checked them earlier as I made my way to the kitchen to find fresh ones. That's when I heard it for the first time. A wet clicking sound, like someone smacking their lips together after eating something sticky. It was coming from upstairs. My blood turned to ice. "Hello?" I called out, hating how my voice cracked. No response. Just that awful clicking noise, slightly louder now. I told myself it was just the house settling, or maybe a branch scraping against the window, anything but what my gut was screaming at me. That someone was in the house, with me. The stairs seemed to groan louder than usual as I climbed them, each creak making me wince. The clicking was definitely coming from my parents' room at the end of the hall. Their door was slightly ajar, which was weird because my mom always kept it closed. I pushed it open with my foot, the flashlight beam shaking wildly. At first, nothing seemed out of place. The bed was neatly made, my mom's perfume bottles lined up on her dresser, my dad's reading glasses on his nightstand. Then I smelled it. A foul, meaty odor that made my stomach turn, like when we left raw chicken in the trash too long during a heat wave. The clicking noise stopped abruptly. That's when I saw the knife. It was partially hidden under the bed, the blade catching the faint light from the window. A hunting knife, the kind my dad used for fishing trips, but he always kept it locked in his toolbox in the garage. As I stared at it, too terrified to move, a pale hand slowly slid out from under the bed. The fingers were long and dirty, the nails cracked and yellowed. They curled into the carpet like spider legs testing the air. Then the voice. "I've been waiting for you." It wasn't human. Not really. It sounded like someone talking through a mouthful of wet cotton, the words bubbling and thick. I don't remember running. One second I was frozen in horror, the next I was flying down the stairs, my socks slipping on the hardwood. I crashed into the front door, fumbling with the locks, my breath coming in ragged sobs. The cold rain shocked me awake as I sprinted barefoot down the street, not stopping until I was pounding on Mrs. Henderson's door, screaming for help. The police found plenty when they searched the house. Muddy boot prints leading from the back door, which had been pried open, straight to my parents' room. A half-eaten bologna sandwich on the kitchen counter that I definitely didn't make. A blood-stained flannel shirt stuffed under the couch. But the worst part? The officers exchanged looks when they found the hunting knife. One of them muttered, "That's Depew's MO, all right." Dennis Depew, a name I would come to know well in the following weeks. A man who had bludgeoned his wife to death just 3 counties over. A fugitive who had been breaking into empty homes, stealing food, sleeping in children's beds. They never caught him that night. A year later, his abandoned car was found near some railroad tracks in Indiana. The driver's seat was soaked in blood, but his body was never recovered. My family moved within the month. The new owners called us 6 months later to ask if we'd ever had issues with the house. They claimed to hear footsteps in the attic at night, said the master bedroom always smelled like rotting meat, no matter how much they cleaned. I'm 42 now, I have kids of my own, and every night before bed, I check under their beds. Not for monsters, for men. because the truth is far more terrifying than any childhood nightmare. Dennis Depew was never caught. His case went cold. And sometimes when I'm alone at night and hear an odd noise, I wonder, is he still waiting? The apartment had always felt slightly off from the moment I signed the lease. It wasn't anything I could pinpoint, just a persistent unease that clung to the back of my neck like spiderwebs. The bathroom mirror in particular gave me the creeps, an antique monstrosity with black speckles in the glass that looked disturbingly like eyes watching you. It was November 1998, and I was a junior at the University of Texas at Arlington. My roommate had gone home for Thanksgiving break, leaving me alone in our off-campus apartment for 5 days. The first night passed without incident, just the usual sounds of an old building settling, the occasional car passing by outside. The trouble started on the second night. I had stayed up late studying, the blue glow of my computer screen the only light in the apartment. Around 2 a.m. I went to brush my teeth before bed. The bathroom light flickered when I flipped the switch. Just once, but enough to make me pause. That's when I noticed the temperature. It was at least 20 degrees colder in the bathroom than the rest of the apartment. My breath came out in visible puffs as I reached for my toothbrush. The mirror was fogged around the edges, though the sink hadn't been used in hours. I was halfway through brushing when I saw movement in the mirror. At first I thought it was just my tired eyes playing tricks. But then she came into focus. A little girl standing directly behind me. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 with stringy black hair plastered to her pale face. Her white nightgown clung to her thin frame, soaked through as if she'd just climbed out of a pool. But her eyes, they were completely black, no whites, no pupils, just endless empty voids that seemed to swallow the light around them. I spun around so fast I slipped on the tile, catching myself on the shower curtain. The bathroom was empty. When I turned back to the mirror, she was closer. Her rotting fingers rested on my shoulder in the reflection. I could feel the weight of them, cold and damp through my t-shirt. Her lips split into a grin, revealing jagged, needle-like teeth. I didn't scream. The sound died in my throat as I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The mirror cracked where I'd been standing, a spiderweb of fractures radiating outward from where her reflection had been. I ran from the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial my friend Jake's number. He laughed at first when I told him what happened, until I showed him the handprint. A perfect, child-sized handprint was burned into my shoulder. The skin was raised and red, as if branded. Jake stayed the night on my couch, though he still seemed skeptical. At 3:07 a.m. exactly, we both heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. We looked at each other. No one should have been able to get into the building at that hour without a key. The peephole showed nothing at first. Then, movement. She was upside down, her head twisted 180 degrees to stare directly into the peephole. Water dripped from her hair onto the welcome mat. Her black eyes seemed to glow in the dim hallway light. "You let me in before," she whispered, her voice like radio static. We didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning I went to the leasing office. The manager paled when I described what I'd seen. He told me the apartment had been vacant for nearly 3 years before I moved in. The last tenant? A 9-year-old girl named Emily who had drowned in the bathtub. Her single mother had been at work for 3 days before anyone noticed the smell. I broke my lease that afternoon. As I was packing, I noticed something in the bathroom. The mirror was completely clear except for one spot. In the center, untouched by the cracks, was a perfect handprint, small, child-sized, and facing outward, as if something had pushed its way through from the other side. To this day, I avoid mirrors at night, because sometimes, when the light is just right, I'll catch movement in the glass, and I know she's still waiting for me to look too closely. The Victorian house stood at the end of Willow Street like a forgotten relic, its peeling paint and sagging porch giving it a permanently mournful expression. My aunt had inherited it from some distant relative and used it as a vacation home, though she rarely visited. When she asked me to house sit for 2 weeks while she went on a cruise, I jumped at the chance. The quiet would be perfect for finishing my graduate thesis. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon in late October. The autumn air carried that crisp apple cider sharpness unique to Wisconsin in fall, the key stuck in the lock before finally turning with a protesting screech. The interior smelled of lemon polish and something earthier underneath, like wet clay and old books. The basement door caught my attention immediately. It was heavier than it should have been, with 3 separate locks, 2 deadbolts and a chain. A handwritten sign taped to it read, "Do not open after dark," in shaky capital letters. That first night was uneventful. I explored the house, marveling at the antique furniture and strange collections. Glass eyeballs in a display case, a cabinet full of rusted medical instruments. The basement door remained closed. On the second night, the humming started. At first, I thought it was the furnace kicking on, a low, steady vibration through the floorboards. But then it changed, became rhythmic, musical. It was a lullaby, one I recognized but couldn't place. The melody slithered up through the vents, just loud enough to make the hairs on my arms stand up. I muted the TV. The humming continued, now accompanied by a faint scratching, like fingernails dragging along wood. I grabbed the baseball bat from beside the front door, my aunt's instructions, "This neighborhood isn't what it used to be," and approached the basement door. The locks were undone. I distinctly remembered locking them before bed. Now all 3 hung open, the chain swaying slightly as if someone had just brushed past it. The stairs groaned under my weight as I descended, bat raised. The flashlight on my phone barely pierced the thick darkness. The air grew colder with each step, until I could see my breath fogging in front of me. The humming stopped the moment my foot touched the concrete floor. The basement stretched out before me, a labyrinth of storage boxes, antique furniture draped in sheets, and a massive rusting furnace in the far corner. Everything was coated in a fine layer of dust. Then I heard the giggle, high-pitched, childlike, coming from inside the west wall. I froze. The giggle came again, closer now, followed by a wet, slithering sound. Something scratched at the interior of the wall, long, deliberate strokes, like a child running a stick along a picket fence. I ran. The basement door slammed behind me hard enough to rattle the pictures in the hallway. I shoved a chair under the knob and spent the rest of the night on the couch with every light in the house blazing. The next morning, I called a handyman from town. Old Marty showed up in coveralls stained with paint and grease, smelling faintly of whiskey. He listened to my story without comment, though his bushy eyebrows climbed higher with each detail. We descended into the basement together. Marty found the scratches first, dozens of them clustered in one section of the west wall. They formed strange patterns, almost like letters. "Wouldn't worry about mice making marks like this," Marty muttered, running his fingers over the grooves. Then he found the handprints. Small, child-sized, pressed into the concrete near the floor as if someone, or something, had crawled along the base of the wall. The prints were too deep to be recent, yet the concrete around them looked freshly disturbed. Near the furnace, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes, Marty uncovered the smiley face. Spray-painted in bright red, the smile stretched too wide, the eyes uneven. It looked freshly done, though Marty swore no one had been down here in years. "Kids probably," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. That afternoon I went to the local library. The librarian, an elderly woman with cat-eye glasses, grew noticeably pale when I mentioned the house's address. "You're staying at the Vickery place?" she asked, fingers tightening around her pencil. She showed me microfiche of old newspapers. The house had been a doctor's residence in the 1920s. Dr. Elias Vickery specialized in women's ailments. The articles grew vague after 1927, when several young women from the area disappeared. The doctor left town abruptly in 1928. The most recent article made my blood run cold. It detailed the 2004 drowning of Jared Dion, a UW La Crosse student. His body had been pulled from the Mississippi River, a smiley face carved into his chest. The police called it a tragic accident, but the article mentioned other similar deaths. All young men, all found in rivers, all with connections to smiley face graffiti near where they'd last been seen. I returned to the house as sunset painted the sky in shades of bruise. The basement door stood slightly ajar again. That night, the humming returned, louder this time, the lullaby resolved into words. "Come play, come stay. Down in the walls we'll hide away." At 3 a.m., the giggling started again. This time it came from multiple directions at once, the vents, the walls, beneath the floorboards. The next morning I packed my bags. As I loaded my car, I noticed fresh graffiti on the side of the house, a red smiley face, still dripping. My aunt sold the property in 2005. The new owners did extensive renovations. When they tore out the west wall, they found a child's skeleton cemented into the foundation. The medical examiner estimated the bones were nearly a century old, but the coroner's report noted something impossible. The marrow was still warm to the touch. To this day, when I hear a child giggling in an empty room or catch a glimpse of a smiley face spray-painted in an alley, I remember the humming, the scratching, and the voice that still whispers from the darkness, "Come play in the walls."